In the early 1900s, life was really hard for people with mental illnesses. There were no good treatments. Patients with severe problems were locked away in huge mental hospitals. Then, a Portuguese neurologist was attending a science conference in 1935. He heard about experiments where scientists removed parts of chimpanzees' brains. The chimps became much calmer and less aggressive afterwards. So he had an idea. What if he did the same thing to humans? He believed that mental illness was caused by a fixed pattern of thoughts stuck in the brain. If he could break these patterns by cutting brain connections, perhaps he could help mental ill patients get better. On November 12, 1935, he performed the first lobotomy on a human patient. He drilled 2 holes in the patient's skull and injected pure alcohol into the frontal lobes to destroy tissue. An American doctor named Walter Freeman heard about this and became really excited about lobotomies and started doing them in America, but he wanted to make them much quicker and easier. In 1946, Freeman invented something shocking called the ice pick lobotomy. He'd basically take a sharp tool like an ice pick and push it through someone's eye socket into the brain and just wiggle it around to cut off brain connections. It only took a few minutes and it didn't even need an operating room. During this time, thousands of lobotomies were performed. Hospitals were crowded with mental patients and doctors thought this was a solution. Sometimes family agreed to lobotomies for relatives who were just sad or even depressed. In 1949, he even won a Nobel Prize for inventing the lobotomy. People thought it was an amazing medical breakthrough. All of this when lobotomies often actually made people worse, not better. After surgeries, many patients became like zombies, couldn't feel emotions properly, couldn't think clearly, and they lost their personalities. Some couldn't take care of themselves anymore. Freeman bought a van and called it the lobotomobile, and he drove around the country performing lobotomies. He would show up at a mental hospital and perform 20 more lobotomies in a single day, one after the other, like an assembly line. Freeman was so confident that he would sometimes perform lobotomies while reporters took photos, and he once accidentally killed a patient during a lobotomy because he paused to pose for a picture and the ice pick went too deep. But because the creator had now got a Nobel Prize, the surgery, if you can call it that, was now legitimised. Now, obviously, there was zero research behind any of this and also zero common sense, but Freeman was driving around the country charging $4,000 in today's money for a 2-minute lobotomy, and Moniz had won the Nobel Prize. By the late 1960s, lobotomies had completely stopped in most developed countries because obviously the long-term research was now coming out and showing how bad it was for people, as well as medication starting to come out for mental health. Walter Freeman performed the last lobotomy in 1967, and the patient was a woman he had already operated on twice before, and she died from a hemorrhage. Freeman's medical license was finally taken away and he was banned from performing any surgery. Lobotomies are a perfect example of, trust me, I represent science, and taking it all the way to the Nobel Prize. Obviously something this stupid would never happen today, but individuals or organizations claiming to, say, represent science and enforcing things that are in fact not based on science still happen to this day, but rather things that allow them to gain for themselves. Just because a doctor or someone in a lab coat says something, it does not instantly make it true, even today.